Well, good evening, folks. This is Bill Breeden. Welcome to my Constellation Tour number 29. Tonight we're going to talk about Aquarius, the water carrier, and we are now making our way through the constellations of the ecliptic. We have our software set here for September the 10th, 2020 at 9:30 p.m. Aquarius is a southern celestial hemisphere constellation along the ecliptic and is best viewed between September and November. So it's an autumn constellation. And we have our software also set up to simulate suburban, moderately light polluted skies looking south-southeast. Okay, Aquarius is chock full of interesting deep sky objects. So let's start by finding it. Now in the autumn, in the early evening, you can simply go outside and look for the teapot asterism of Sagittarius if it's not too late in the evening and it hasn't set yet. So at 9:30 p.m. we still have the teapot above the horizon. Here's the spout, here's the lid, here's the handle. Okay, now if you look to the left of Sagittarius, for this faint V shape in the sky, that's Capricornus. Now we went over that during a previous constellation tour. So to find Aquarius, you want to move to the left yet again of Capricornus. And Aquarius is a faint constellation, but it is large. And there are several moderately bright stars. But what I like to look for are these three stars here in a little curve. That's the water jar of Aquarius. That's the water jar of the water carrier. So let's turn on our mythical figures and you'll see what I'm talking about. These three stars here actually make up the water jar that Aquarius is pouring out, okay? And you can see there's a couple of stars here that extend out this way, and then there's one for his knee. There's a faint one here that represents the water, but I think the water jar itself is what stands out. So this little curve of stars right here. Now this star right here is another one you can look for. That's Fomalhaut, or Alpha Piscis Australis, and that one is the brightest star in the far southern skies in the autumn from the northern hemisphere. So if you're looking south and you see pretty much an empty sky of bright stars in the fall, and you'll see Fomalhaut here just comes above the southern horizon, and that's another way you can find Aquarius, because Aquarius is always just above Fomalhaut. So the way I like to look at it is Aquarius is pouring water from this water jar here, and it's all splashing down, and Fomalhaut is part of a fish constellation. You can see there's a fish here, Piscis Australis, and Aquarius is pouring water down sort of toward the fish. The fish is over a little bit, but that's kind of the way I remember it. So let's go over that again. You can always look for the teapot of Sagittarius and then come over to the left, find Capricornus, come over to the left again and find this curve of three stars up here. That's the water jar, and this whole area here then, down here and up and over to here, is Aquarius. or you can simply look south and look for this bright, lonely, solitary, bright star here. Fomalhaut has a magnitude of 1, so it is the brightest star in this entire area of the sky. So let's look at our constellation boundaries. And you'll see it, Aquarius is a very large constellation. It actually kind of hooks in here above Capricornus and extends over here to the water jar and then down to where the water is pouring out. So I put the ecliptic up here since Aquarius is an ecliptic constellation, and you'll see this path here in yellow. That's the path that the sun follows. And from February 16th until March 11th, that would be from here to here, the sun spends that part of the year crossing Aquarius. So here are the way the constellation lines are drawn. This here would be the water jar right here, and this is the water being poured. And this is the arm here, and then this is the body of Aquarius, the water carrier. So you have a body here, you have water being poured, and you have an arm extending out over Capricornus. It takes a little getting used to that shape. So, as I said, I just look for these 3 stars here, and then these 2 here, and then imagine water being poured out of the jar down to just above where Fomalhaut is. So let's look for a double star. There's one really nice double star in Aquarius, and it's in the water jar. So let's have a look here. I think it's the middle one, Zeta Aquarii. I believe so. Let's have a look at this in the Finder. And let's look at it in an eyepiece. Now you can see it's just starting to split. So let's split it manually here. And it takes a lot of power to split Zeta, but it does split. It's a 4th magnitude double star, approximately 100 light years from Earth. Okay, let's return to naked eye view. And let's venture out to a dark site and see how different Aquarius looks. Okay, now you're at a dark site. Now, from a dark site, it's almost easier just to start by searching for Fomalhaut, because in the autumn, you can see here that this really bright star sort of hugs the southern horizon. And as the month marches on, as the hours march on, Fomalhaut will move like this, but it won't get, it never gets very high, and it is always the only 1st magnitude star in this entire part of the sky. So that makes Aquarius easy to find. Just look above Fomalhaut for this curve of stars here, and then these 2 brighter ones above it, and this sprinkling of stars down to about here. And this whole area then is Aquarius. Okay, there are several deep sky objects that we can treat ourselves to a view to in Aquarius. Let's start with 3 Messier objects. Let's start with M2. If I remember right, M2 is one of the best. It's a globular cluster. And you can see here's the water jar here. Here's the two stars here that extend outward from in Aquarius. And M2 is a globular cluster 39,000 light years away. And you can see through the finder here that it's going to be a nice bright little globular. And there's the way it would look through a 24 millimeter panoptic eyepiece. It shines at 6th magnitude, so that from a dark side that will look really bright through an 8-inch telescope, and even brighter through a larger aperture telescope. Okay, and let's look for another globular cluster in Aquarius, M72. Now you can see where we are. Here's the water jar here. Here's the two stars that extend. So we're in the furthest reaches of Aquarius, way over here, almost in Capricornus. So let's have a look through the finder. And this is also a globular cluster. This one is 9th magnitude. Now M2 was 6th magnitude, so that is a big difference. This one is 55,000 light years away. So this one is pretty far away. Let's have a look at it through the eyepiece. And you can see through the same eyepiece, the 24 millimeter panoptic, that M72 is much smaller and fainter, but still worth searching for and observing. Okay, we have another Messier object to search for in Aquarius, an open cluster, M73. There's nothing like the Messier catalog. And here, M73 must be right next to M72 because we barely moved. This is a 9th magnitude open cluster. And through the finder, it is small and dim. And it's small and dim through the eyepiece as well. We need a little more power on this one. Let's go with a 13 millimeter eyepiece. And that pulls it in a little better. So this is a small, faint, open cluster located 2,500 light years from Earth. Okay, we have a couple of objects in the new general catalog to look for, the NGC. The first one is NGC 7009. I love searching for NGC objects out in the field. It's so much fun. This one is also in the Caldwell catalog. It's Caldwell 55, the planetary nebula known as the Saturn Nebula, located, let's see, 4,300 light years from Earth. And here we are through the finder scope. It's right next to this bright star here. You see basically a small stellar object at 8th magnitude. And through the 13 millimeter eyepiece, it really does somewhat resemble the planet Saturn just because of the shape of it. So that is the Saturn Nebula, or Caldwell 55, NGC 7009. Return back to a naked eye view. And I have one more NGC object to search for while we're out tonight in Aquarius, NGC 7293. And this is way down toward the bottom of the constellation. Here's the water jar here. NGC 7293 shines at magnitude 7.6. And it's located 518 light years from Earth. This is another planetary nebula known as the Helix Nebula. So looking through the finder, you can see this is a large object. I mean, it extends nearly half a degree across. So it is not going to be this bright through your telescope or through your finder. You would need some serious aperture and a very dark sight to have a view like this. Let's back it down to a 24 millimeter panoptic. Yeah, the software is being pretty generous here. It's not quite going to look that bright and that detailed, but what you'll see through an 8 or 10 inch telescope from a dark site will be a fainter version of this, and you'll only see the brighter parts of it, and probably this out here where it shines the brightest. And you'll see these two stars to give you a sense of scale. So this concludes my overview of Aquarius, the water carrier. Good night and good seeing.